For today's video, I'll be comparing guppies and neon tetras, which are two of the most popular fish species in the hobby. So starting with appearance, because both guppies and neons are great looking fish. Neon tetras are known for their striking blue, red and white coloration, and in my tank I do keep them alongside the similar cardinal tetras, which have the longer red patch on their belly. Now there are a few selectively bred strains of neon tetras in the hobby, and to my knowledge the diamond strain is the most popular offshoot from the main species, but there's long tail variants and a few others. But while neon tetras do tend to look very similar with that white, red and blue coloration, they look excellent in planted tanks because their colours contrast so well against the green of plants. Guppies, on the other hand, offer an incredible variety of different colours, tail shapes and patterns to suit almost any preference. Their diversity allows you to create a colourful dynamic tank with fish swimming in all levels of the water column, moving in their own different directions, making the aquarium very entertaining to watch. This can give your aquarium a more colourful and lively feel compared to a group of neon tetras, which usually stay closer together towards the bottom half of the aquarium. That said, even though guppies offer a far wider range of colours and patterns, there's just something about that electric blue colour on neon tetras that always catches the eye. So for this section I'm calling it a draw, because both species are absolutely stunning in their own way. Next up, I want to look at the behaviour and temperament of each species, but in all honesty both guppies and neon tetras are excellent options for either species specific aquariums or community tanks. While you may see some sparring between the males of either species, especially when they are establishing and maintaining their dominance hierarchy, this behaviour is usually limited to their own species. In mixed tanks, guppies and neon tetras generally leave all of the other fish that they are with alone and they just do their own thing peacefully. Even when there is some interaction between the males to maintain dominance hierarchy, it's rarely getting physical and it's usually just some tail fanning and a little bit of chasing. This means that overall either species will work in almost any type of aquarium you can think up, be it a species specific setup or a community tank setup with a lot of different species of fish. Moving on, and I want to talk about tank requirements, and I personally recommend a minimum of 10 US gallons, which is around 38 litres or above for guppies or neon tetras. Now I do know that is under the general recommendation of neon tetras, but I've kept mine in 29 gallon tanks and 40 gallon tanks, and they are really not as active as some other species, so I do think they'll be fine in that 10 gallon size. Adding hiding spots is also a good idea, and while I am personally a big fan of live plants, hardscape or tank decorations can work just as well. If you do choose live plants, then the broadleaf, easier to keep varieties of Anubias, Cryptocoreans and Echinodorus are usually the best options for this type of setup because they are easy to keep and their leaves offer plenty of hiding coverage. In my experience, neon tetras really appreciate cover and shade in their aquariums and they'll generally stay closer towards it. This lets the neons retreat into the plant cover if something scares them, like rapidly moving fish going for food or something like that. Guppies, on the other hand, are far more confident, but the non-dominant males do tend to sneak off and hide away from the dominant males so they can get a break from the constant sparring to maintain the hierarchy. If you're keeping your guppies in a breeding setup too, then offering hiding spots for the females to get away from the male attention can be a good idea. I've kept both species with a variety of different filter types, and right now my neons are in my 40 gallon tank with a Fluval FX2 canister filter set to around 80% of its maximum flow, and they are totally fine. That said, guppies may struggle with that amount of flow depending on your tank setup, so something like a sponge filter, internal filter or hang-on back filter may be a better option for guppies. Moving on to tank mates, and I currently keep my neon tetras in my 40 gallon community tank along with a variety of other fish species, and they get along fine. I do usually only keep my guppies in species specific setups, but I have kept them with endless live bearers, shrimp and a couple of species of snail without problem. In general, I really do think that both guppies and neon tetras will usually be fine in community tanks that have other community friendly species that are calm and relaxed. If you are thinking about taking that path for a community tank, then here's some species that I've personally kept and recommend. Things like Harlequin rasboras, chili rasboras, cardinal tetras, corydoras, honey gourami, Siamese algae eaters, medaka, zebra danios, endless live bearers, cherry shrimp, armano shrimp, nerite snails and ram's horn snails are usually fine. Now there's plenty of other species out there that I don't personally keep that I am sure will work fine in a community tank, but do a little bit of research on anything I didn't mention to double check. So moving on, and we get to diet, and the good news is that both guppies and neon tetras are very easy to feed in a typical aquarium. Guppies are very confident little fish and they will happily swim up to food in my tanks as soon as I add it, and they'll eat a large amount to get their fill as quickly as possible. Then I usually see my guppies go off and look for whatever I've added to the tank for my shrimp to eat, and then they'll top up their fill with any shrimp food that can steal too. In contrast, neon tetras are definitely the shiest species and they will usually be more reserved and stay away from the commotion of things like Harlequin rasboras or guppies or even corydoras that are getting food as soon as it's in the tank. However, one advantage of neon tetras over some other species is that they tend to stay in the bottom half of the tank and they will happily pick food off the substrate if needed. Now, depending on your setup, this might not be relevant, but it is nice to know that the neon tetras will happily pick leftover food up and eat it if they don't get food when you initially add it to the tank. And if you're wondering for any specific food recommendations, then I usually feed mine either Fluval Bug Bites Light Blue Label formula or Hikari micro pellets, and they love both of them. So moving on, and we get to water parameters, and the good news is that both guppies and neon tetras tend to do well in a typical tropical aquarium water temperature. In most aquarium setups, this is going to be between 21 and 25 degrees Celsius, which works out to be 70 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Now there is some wiggle room on either side of that for both species, especially guppies, but most people will be keeping tropical tanks in that range. Where things do start to differ between guppies and neon tetras is when it comes to their recommended pH and water hardness levels. Neon tetras are typically found in soft acidic water with wild pH ranges ranging from as low as 4.0 up to 7.5, and water hardness is usually between 1 and 12 dgh. Guppies, on the other hand, come from far harder, more alkaline environments and tend to prefer a pH of between 7.0 and 8.5 with a hardness between 8 and 30 dgh. So while there is a little bit of overlap between that, so you could technically keep both species in the same tank, it is a very narrow crossover window, so I personally wouldn't recommend it. An easier approach is to check the pH and hardness of your tap water, and if you're in a soft water area, go with neon tetras, and if you're in a hard water area, go with guppies. So I do want to talk about the hardiness of each species because unfortunately their popularity in the hobby has come with downsides. Due to the high demand of both neon tetras and guppies, they are mass produced by commercial fish farms in huge amounts, so there is minimal genetic diversity. Over time, this has led to a decline in the hardiness of both species, unfortunately, but in my experience, I do think neon tetras are a little bit hardier than guppies overall. That said, I really don't think either species is resilient as something like Harlequin rasboras, celestial pearl danios, white cloud mountain minnows, or honey gourami. With guppies, there's more specialist strains in the hobby too, with more colour, larger patterns and different tail shapes, and they've likely been inbred even more, reducing their hardiness further. That's why I've personally started to go with the cheaper assorted guppies in my local aquatic shops, because not only are they cheaper, but they are bred for sheer numbers rather than specific colours, potentially increasing the genetic diversity. But if you are looking for the best quality fish possible, trying to find a local reputable breeder in your area, or at least someone who will ship to your area, is a good option, but I've not done this personally. Next up, I want to talk about the cost and availability, because in general both species are really easy to find in aquatic shops, but there are some unique situations. In my area, neon tetras tend to work out far more affordable than guppies, especially if you're willing to buy at least 10 of them. Moving up from there, we get to assorted guppies, which are still affordable fish, but they usually cost around double what a neon tetra does in my local shop. But if you're interested in fancy guppies that have unique colours, patterns and tail shapes, the prices can quickly start to increase, and although there are some budget-friendly options, Actually finding the ones you want in your area can be a pain. So I just want to quickly try and wrap things up because both guppies and neon tetras really are beautiful fish and I keep both species in my fish room. That said, neon tetras are starting to sneak ahead of guppies for me personally because they are cheaper and a little bit hardier and you know what your fish is going to look like. While assorted guppies can be cheaper and potentially have more genetic diversity in them, it can be hit and miss when it comes to the amount of colour on them, and I've lost count of the number of times I've went to a local aquatic shop and the guppies are basically all black fish or they might have a tiny little bit of colour on them. And then when it comes to fancy guppies, these can just be an absolute nightmare and very inconsistent in the supply chain, so you might see a guppy you want one week, it gets sold out, and then you go back the next week and it's no longer available. Anyway guys, that brings the video to an end. Thanks for watching. I hope it's been helpful in helping you choose between neon tetras and guppies for your aquarium.